You know, I have been getting really good at trying to get my lives on time around 2 o'clock. And today I was really getting into the live. I've been talking for the last 25 minutes thinking I'm live broadcasting and noticing that there has been no interaction in the chat, which is fine. I mean, I've had lives like that. So I'm just going to town. There's a button in the top right corner that said go live. So it was literally showing me a preview, and I was literally talking to myself for 25 minutes straight. Oh my goodness. Anyone who has been standing around waiting for the live to actually kick off, I am so sorry. Some of you probably went away like, I guess the live's not happening today. So again, I do apologize. Apparently I just need to learn to work with technology. On some previous lives that I've had before, whether they were planned or not, typically when I say start streaming, it starts picking up the feed and the live is actually live. So that's not the case this time. Yeah, that's rather embarrassing, but I'm going to go ahead and leave that in and explain for those that catch it later. So today's topic, let's go over this again. Warding, shielding, and spiritual protection. When it comes to warding, shielding, and spiritual protection, I want to say a disclaimer to begin with. So the reason I want to start with this is because other individuals might be popping in and they might not necessarily believe in energy, spirituality, magic, mysticism, vibrations. And that's fine. You know, I acknowledge up front that when it comes to any spirituality, any belief system, any magic or mysticism, that is 100% could just be nothing, right? Just all in our heads. But here's the thing. Just because you don't believe in it doesn't make it not real or not right. So if you are one person who does not believe in this stuff, you might be in the wrong spot, but maybe you're checking it out to hear how the other side thinks. Regardless, my personal thoughts of if warding, shielding, and spiritual protection is real and does it exist? Yes, as of today, and for many, many years, probably most of my life, I do believe in spiritual protection, warding, and shielding. I do think it's real. And I think it is mostly based on belief. I don't think it's anything that we can necessarily scientifically prove, although I do think that some protective means have been scientifically proven throughout the year on why they work. All right, Robert R.D. Brooks, just got your notification. Yeah, I'm sorry, man. I was thinking I was streaming for the last half hour talking, and I noticed the chat was kind of quiet. And then I just wanted to double check, see how many people were viewing, and I noticed that it said go live instead of end stream. I didn't see that. Like, I just thought I was just prattling on and people were really into what I was talking about, and here I am talking to myself. So yeah, fun times. So let's go back over what I was saying for the last half hour and see if I can paraphrase some of it. Warding, protection, shielding. It's like, what's the difference between warding and shielding? Let's start there. I think having some definitions and terms. So I've already done my disclaimer. Like I said, if you don't believe in subtle vibrational energy, fine. Some people do, some people don't. It's blind faith, as it were. You know, if you get into arcane new age stuff, you're going to believe in subtle vibrations and energy. Is it something you can prove? No. Is it something you feel? Yeah. So could your feelings be wrong? Sure. That's possible. But people still believe in it anyway. So go with it. When I think of warding, that was one of the things that I talked about. So when I'm bringing this stuff up, I'm going to be bringing up definitions, way of doing things, and using things based upon my experience. And when I say my experience, I mean myself dabbling and books that I've read, talking with other individuals. So I don't know a lot of the sources for some of the information I'm bringing up. So it is hearsay. So this is one of those situations where I'm telling you right now, a lot of what you're going to hear in this video is straight up hearsay, my opinion, the way I look at it. So take that for what it is. What does that mean for you? That means you're going to hear some stuff that you've heard before, things that have been repeated without being able to be proven from a source or an origin, but it's also going to hopefully inspire you to go ask, why do we believe that? Or why is that a belief that is commonly repeated and practiced? Let's start with warding. When I personally think of warding, I think of warding as in protecting typically an inanimate object of some form, like a house. You ward a house, you ward a car. Whereas a individual living being, you would shield. Honestly, the two terms are pretty much interchangeable. And depending on the tradition you're talking about, you could use either term. When I was first introduced to the phrase warding, it was actually through some of the neo-druidry stuff. There was even a ritualistic thing that I was read about. Yeah, read about would be more accurate than saying taught. There was actually a technique that I had read about that I still remember most of. I might have modified it or misremembered it over the years and made it my own. But they introduced it as warding. And I think when it comes to shielding, it can be a reflexive thing. Like if you feel like you're under spiritual assault, which even with someone who believes in this stuff, I do not think psychic or spiritual assault is as common as people think it is. And I don't think it is as harmful as some people assume it is. Which some people that are into this stuff might be like, well, you're crazy. Psychic attack is very real and it's very dangerous. And that's fine. If you believe in that, again, we don't have to agree on what is real and what is not. We're talking about a topic and deep diving into it and asking the what if, the whys, and different ways of thinking about it and different ways that it has been shared with others. So that's fine. If you take it to the extreme and you need all the protection in the world, great. If you don't think any of this is real and it's all BS, great. I'm somewhere in the middle. I think protection is important to a certain degree. In fact, I was actually talking to my wife the other day about spiritual protection and warding. And one of the things that stood out to her is, why do we need spiritual protection and warding? What are we doing? We as in like anyone who's dabbling, not me and her specifically. Like what is an individual doing practicing magic or mysticism that is so dangerous that you need protection to do it? And I don't think it's necessarily that you need protection. I've actually talked to, there's one of the covens I was talking to, the practitioner. Actually, you know what? I will call them out and give them a shout out. I was talking to Pagan Coffee Talk. Awesome group, awesome channel. And they were talking about the fact that they don't always cast a circle and do a huge ritual anytime that they do things with magic or spirituality. It's not all the time. They have special times when they do. But I've read about other individuals in some of the books that I have and I've talked to other individuals that really do put a circle of protection around anything they do, which is interesting. So it's definitely interesting. Sorry, I got distracted. I repeated myself because I just looked down. Robert said, sad, what you have to say is very valid. You're not the only person with low feedback regardless. Keep going. Yeah, I mean, I like to talk about this stuff, but I think it's important to vocalize and acknowledge the fact that speaking about anything when it comes to belief is that belief. And it's not stuff that you can back up with facts, right? A lot of modern science comes out of these old spiritual practices, these old wise individuals. They explored by following their senses or experimenting, doing a type of science. And in essence, it's almost like a pseudoscience, right? It's not actual factual science. It's their own thing, but they kind of piece it together as if it was a science. And that's where a lot of the spirituality stuff is. And throughout the years, things that could work for science, they plucked out from these individuals until all we're left with is some of the new age stuff that some people think is hooey because science hasn't proven it yet. One day, who knows? Science could prove that the way some of our brain waves work and its effect on the world around us. I mean, I think there's something to be said for psychology. Like psychology alone of putting your mind or thoughts in a certain place, affirmations, repeating something has a profound effect on you. How you are feeling has a profound effect on you. Anxiety and all of that stuff is real. It manifests itself very physically, but it's all from the mental planes of, and people explore the mental stuff and call it psychology and whatnot and what's going on in your head to make this stuff happen. But, we're seeing actual manifestation through physical pain and shaking and jittering, different stomach problems through anxiety and stuff. And you can say that's all in your head, but you're having a physical, real reaction to what's going on in your head. So in my personal opinion, I think that there is a lot to be said for just in your head. Well, everything is just in your head. You're experiencing the world through your senses and through your touch and through looking at stuff, smelling stuff. You have your five senses you're interacting with, but it's all going up into your head and how you interpret it. Whether you shut that out or ignore it, or what sort of effect it has on you, you yourself are all up in your head. So if it is just in your head, your little whole reality and existence is being affected. So even if, which I acknowledge is a possibility, all magic and mysticism is just around convincing yourself of things, it works, right? I mean, the whole, what do they call it? Placebo effect. Why is it working at all with the placebo effect? They believe in that medication or whatever they're taking, which literally is like a sugar pill and does nothing, but it's having an effect. Because again, the power of the mind. I don't know. I think it's a huge thing. Same thing of having confidence or low self-esteem and everything else. Like there's something to be said about our minds and how they interact and work. Now, warding, shielding, spiritual protection. So going back to that, I think every culture, every spirituality, every religion has some form of warding and spirituality. If you think about the Abrahamic faiths, right? They pray for protection. They ask their deity to watch over them. That's a form of spiritual protection. It doesn't necessarily just have to be casting a circle or casting a ritualistic ward or shielding. I mentioned earlier that I was talking about the idea of warding and how I originally heard the term was, from what I remember, besides for games, video games, because I love games, is warding in the sense of actual spirituality stuff was through neo-druidry. I remember reading in one of the books, and I don't remember what book it was, a particular ritualistic ceremony that you could do in your head. So here's the thing. I'm really getting frame drops. Why am I getting so many frame drops? My internet's pissing me off. I'm starting to think weekend's a bad time to live stream. Maybe I should pre-record some of these videos. The particular ritual, people sometimes will physically act out rituals as they're doing them, which is fine. It's what you're comfortable with. Other people will literally visualize themselves doing the ritual in their head. And supposedly from spiritual circles, the spiritual community, both work. The physical act of doing it is not as important as the intent and the will that you put behind it. So visualizing yourself doing it is the same thing as actually getting up and doing it. Some people, it helps them concentrate to get up and do it. Some people would refer to this as being theatrical. It doesn't really matter. It's what works for you yourself. So in this particular type of warding, you would, in your mind, draw a triangle in the air. So again, if you're physically doing it, maybe you grab a wand, maybe you use your hand and point. Doesn't matter. You're drawing a giant white triangle, and this white triangle is pure light, pure radiance, bright. And then you would do a quarter turn. Now, some people will associate this with the directions. I don't remember if that was in the original ritual or not for the warding. But you would do a quarter turn to another direction. If you don't have directions, you just do a quarter turn. Obviously, when you do 4, you're back in the starting position where you drew the first white triangle. Then you draw a black triangle, pure black, void, draw in no light whatsoever. Another quarter turn. So now it's the opposite side of where the first triangle was. You draw another white triangle. Quarter turn again. Now it's facing the opposite side of that other black triangle, and you draw another one. So you have 4 triangles. Tips pointed up. And then you merge the tips so it encases and makes like a pyramid shape. And then, as some people will say, as above and below, you mirror it downward. So the black will create a white one below it. The white will create a black one below it. And you make like 2 pyramid shapes around what you're warding. So if you're warding your house, you visualize your house. If you're physically acting it out, you still have to visualize your house, because that's, I mean, unless you want to walk around your house, which, I mean, it's up to you, right? It's what you're comfortable with. But the idea here is talking about light spectrum. So those white triangles is that pure white light. How does colors work? We're talking about reflecting back parts of the light spectrum that are not absorbed. Red is absorbing everything but the color red. Black is absorbing everything. That's why when you wear a black t-shirt, it gets so much hotter than if you're wearing a white t-shirt outside under the sun. I believe that's how that works. Could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's how that works. So the idea here of having a triangle of reflecting and pushing everything back, and then a triangle of drawing in and consuming everything, that's the idea behind that ward. It's like this basis of how light works. Again, this is where you're having a tie-in between esoteric, spiritual, new age stuff and how science works. You're applying real science to pseudoscience, or maybe the pseudoscience inspired the real science. Who knows? Hey, I'm getting frame drops again. This is going to be a fun stream. Hopefully it doesn't cut out too much during this conversation. And by all means, feel free to jump in and talk about how you think of warding. So that's typically how I think of warding. That's what comes to mind first. I think of that like pyramid shape that you put around stuff. And it's supposed to be like something that stays there. It's like a crystal. It's like a prism surrounding what you're trying to ward, versus a shield, which some people will think of a shield like a wall or a barrier in front of them, or like an actual shield just out of energy. I personally like to think of shield like a bubble, like an orb. And again, talking about science, thinking about how an orb works, right? The reason helmets are designed the way they are, things can ricochet off of them unless it hits the exact direct point. And if you think about a rubber ball, it flexes a little bit and retakes its shape. So it takes a lot of pressure. Trying to crush a rubber ball or stab it with something is difficult because it bounces and rolls away and pops back up to its normal shape. Not to mention having protection from all sides and all around. In fact, when people do circles of protection, whether they're doing a ritual or not, if they're trying to put a circle around something, I typically think of that as a sphere. And the center of that sphere is what's touching the earth. So you have like a dome above it and a dome below it. And that, again, that circumference is where that orb is touching the ground. So you can think of shielding something, whether it's a person or yourself, putting a full globe of energy around it. Witchcraft, Minecraft, psychology, alchemy, chemistry, astrology, astronomy. Words are hard. Yesterday's magic, tomorrow's science. Yes, I love that turn of phrase, Robert. I really do. I've heard other people say that, and I've said it myself, you know. Yesterday's magic is today's science. That's such a good way of looking at it. Hey, Jay Woodwuff. So when you came on earlier and said hi, I said hi back to you, but I didn't realize it said go live for the button in the top right corner. I was talking for an entire half hour to myself thinking I was streaming. And now I'm having frame drops, so it's probably skipping. Now it says end stream. Previously, when I hit start stream, it kicks on right away and starts streaming instantly. So I should have checked for that. This time I had my microphone on, but I didn't have I didn't click the go live. Fun times. Infernal greetings. Interesting greeting, but hey, welcome. Welcome to the stream, Kelvin Frazier. So that's one way I think of warding. And like I said, I mean, you can do different types of warding to it, but I think term warding and shielding can be interchangeable. I think it just comes down to the tradition. It seems like the same thing. And we'll look up some definitions here in a minute. Because like I said, most of this stuff I don't have sources for. It's just stuff I remember reading about. But I still think it's an interesting conversation and topic. You can protect your house by putting crystals in the four corners. It could be a quartz crystal or it could be some other crystal that has a vibration that you're looking for. Sometimes you can add a little bit extra and connect with your mind. Again, imagining. You imagine, you manifest into reality. You put your will there. All energy follows thought. I don't remember where I originally read that either, but it's something I repeat, something that's known in the community. We don't know why it's real or why it works, but a lot of us believe it. You could put pine needles. So pine needles apparently are supposed to ward off evil. And I don't know why. I think I read that in Scott Cunningham's Encyclopedia of Magical Herbs. I'm tempted to grab it real quick and double check that. But some people sprinkle like pine needles under the bed so they don't have bad dreams, or they'll sprinkle them around the house or around the border of their house. And I wonder if some of that stuff is how we do get some of the sciences we do have, right? Like off, which is a bug spray in America to ward off mosquitoes. Maybe something that they had to ward off mosquitoes they used back in the day, and they found out that there was scientifically sound that repels mosquitoes. Could be. I think there is some relations there, but I don't think that's something we necessarily need to look into greatly. The magic of believing itself is just sometimes just believing, but then you get this fine line of, but why does it work? Why is this particular herb or stone or phrase so effective at warding off whatever? You talk about this with the she. Iron's apparently very toxic for the she, so you can very much offend and ward off. She is in like the fair folk, Irish type stuff, right? Shidde, I think is how you spell she. Or is it Sidhe? I think it's H before the D. I'll have to look that up later. Nah, I'm gonna look it up now. It's gonna drive me nuts. As my internet lags and my video constantly. Sidhe. She. It's pronounced she. Ah, welcome, rookie. Crystals are good for banishing people. Just throw them at people that are exactly. Use them out of a slingshot. Regardless, keep going. Still listening. Will do. I got my Yamaha stock. Haven't touched the electrics. No problem with the shielding whatsoever. Welcome. Okay, cool. Caught up on chat. When it comes to other forms of spiritual protection, sometimes it's as simple as wearing an item or a symbol, getting a tattoo, or just simply saying a prayer to a deity. When it comes to different things that you can wear, two of the most common terms and phrases that I'll hear is amulet and talisman. The way I understand amulet is something that is protective, either because it was enchanted. There's different ways of enchanting, putting intent into it, praying over it, or because the nature of the symbol itself, but it's just protective, and that's what it does. Just by being and being on your person, it works as a ward or a shield. It's an amulet. Talisman sometimes are also amulets, but talismans typically hold magical power and store energy for use. So a talisman can sometimes be an amulet, but most amulets are not talismans. I've also heard people use those two words interchangeably, like they use ward and shielding interchangeably. I always think that's a very fascinating way to look about it, or look at it. Man, my words are just so twisted today. This is what happens when you repeat yourself twice in a half hour. I look at, like, in Abrahamic faith, specifically with the Christianity stuff, that's basically a cross and a crucifix. Now, the difference being between a crucifix and a cross is a cross is just literally that, basically a lowercase t, right, in English. But a crucifix actually has Jesus hanging from the cross. But in either case, both of them are typically worn for protection. They're worn like amulets. The nature of it just being a cross and being the symbol itself. However, some Christian priests or nuns or monks will actually enchant or load or amplify that protection by blessing it, blessing that symbol, anointing it with oil, holy water, whatever the case may be, and saying a prayer over it enhances and amplifies that protection effect. And it does. It actually 100% works as a protection thing. In some of the Scandinavian cultures, we have Mjolnir, the hammer of Thor. And just wearing that symbol alone is protection. That would be an example of a type of amulet. Or as they say in Old Norse, talfur. As I think talfur is basically like a talisman. It's more than just an amulet. It's like, it's something worn with power, basically. And then you have in modern covens and circles and whatnot, in witchcraft or even in Wicca, they will have a pentagram. Specifically, some people like to call it the pentacle because it has the circle around it. But it is symbolic for many of all of existence. The 5 points represent 5 of the elements that make up the prime material plane. And wearing that as a symbol, symbol is protection just by wearing the symbol. And in that case, it focuses as an amulet, though typically most pentagrams or pentacles are also talismans, as they also have power infused into them that can be used just by wearing it as well. So you do have a variety of things. Thank you for the brush up. Remember your original video. Yeah, no problem. No problem. I'm going to hit refresh on my screen here on the left because my preview, you see the big white light. I'm blind. The preview is kind of cutting in and out, and it says I'm dropping frames. So I know it's stuttering a little bit. Hopefully the stuttering is not too bad because it's only a 12% frame drop. For some reason, my internet service has been really kicking out a lot on the weekends. It might just be a bandwidth for people in my area using the internet service. So hopefully y'all can follow along fine. And if nothing else, you can catch it afterwards in my live section on my YouTube. All right. So yeah, that's different types of forms of spiritual protection. There's also, I mean, you can just doing cleansing itself is a good way of protection, just keeping things clean so they don't build up, right? You can do grounding and centering, which can be very, very effective. When you talk about ritual, a lot of people will create ritual space, where I've always viewed it as an orb, a globe, and the circle is where it's touching the ground. But it goes a little bit beyond that too. Like you have different traditions, like even in Jewish mysticism, Kabbalah, they actually have in one of their manuals for basically delivering a child, drawing a circle into the floor with a knife. And they draw a circle protection around the pregnant mother to keep the demon Lilith out so it doesn't possess the mother or the child. Interesting stuff there. But again, you have this idea of spiritual protection transcending all different faiths and religions and is used in many different practices, which again, even if you don't believe in this stuff, people that do, it's pretty prevalent, right? It's pretty common that if you're in the spirituality of some form, you believe in some form of protecting yourself, whether that be wearing some sort of an amulet or talisman, having tattoos on your body for protective purposes, or creating a ward or shield. There is a very, very common thing that I've seen, and again, I don't know the origin of this, but there's this sending back curses and negative energy thing that's done with a mirror. And there's different ways of doing it, but the idea is of course, so mirrors themselves used to be made with a silver backing, as I understand it, and silver itself is considered a pure metal. It's usually associated with the goddess, the moon, and magic. So a lot of people like mirrors for magic work, but magic reflects back. The mirror itself is reflecting back light, therefore it is symbolic of reflecting back whatever's coming at you. So some people will take a black candle, light the candle in a mirror, and they'll say something along the lines, and it doesn't matter what you say, but I've heard people use this phrase, black, black, send the evil back. And the idea here is, again, when we're talking about the light spectrum, when it comes to protection, what does black do? Draw in all the light waves. So symbolically, in magic, draws in all of those magic. So when you're focusing on sending back a curse or negative vibration towards you, it's drawing it into that candle. The light is just, I think, part of fueling the actual spell itself, is the way I've understood it. When you do some form of candle magic, lighting it, you're using fire magic essentially. And you're drawing all of that negativity into the candle that's getting burnt down. So the candle absorbs it, the flame burns it down to release it, and it releases it straight into that mirror, which then reflects it back to its sender, is the idea, as I understand it. So there's the theology or theory behind why that may or may not work. But yeah, reflecting back negativity and curses and bad stuff. So that's a active defense versus a passive defense, like a shield. With the shields themselves, I've heard of people thinking about it like a mesh or like a gate or like a fence, you know, like a weave pattern, to where things can come in and out, but nothing negative can penetrate. Only good things can come through those openings. I've heard other people think about it like a shield, which again mirrors it back, reflects it back, similar to the idea of the candle and mirror. So there's definitely some interesting items out there for protection, whether it's carrying a stone or wearing an image, or like I said, like the tattoo, saying a prayer, having faith in whatever it is you believe in. You can have a very similar thing with homes, right? Like what makes a home a home? There are, I'm talking about vampires again, and now I can't remember if it was in this part where I'm redoing the video or if it was before I started re-recording when I realized I was not broadcasting. Kelvin says, I wear the sigil of Baphomet to remind myself that I walk the left-hand path. There you go. Do you wear that specifically as like an amulet for protection, or is it just as a reminder's sake? Yeah, I'm getting so many frames dropped right now. Fun times. Okay. Vampires. So one of the myths behind vampires is they can't enter a home without being invited. And I think part of that comes down to the fact that when you make something a home, you are in essence doing a type of protection. Why do I say this? When you walk into a school or a public place, it feels different than if you walk into someone's home. When you first move, it doesn't feel like home for a while until eventually something feels different. It feels like home. That moment when you feel like it feels like home, I think is what activates whatever natural protection happens from just having a home. This is stuff that we can't really, maybe it's just psychological, but it's something that I think the average person, even if they don't practice mysticism, spirituality, can relate with. Feeling like their home felt like home. Talking about, yeah, this is home. The comfort you feel from walking into your own house. And I genuinely believe, like, even when you're coming to visit someone else, you feel the difference of walking in. And being invited versus just walking in. Now, some people are just comfortable walking into their family's houses, but I've known people, myself included, that just don't feel comfortable walking into someone else's home because it's their home and there's some sort of this respect for it. And maybe that is a psychological thing associated with our society more than it is something spiritual, but I put some spiritual emphasis on it myself. A reminder's sake. Oh, I see. Psychic protection or spear of light energy. Right. And I think psychic typically gets used a lot for anything dealing with any sort of mental plane. So I think it can be kind of interchangeable with some of the other stuff that we're talking about. I don't know if we necessarily need to call it specifically psychic when we're talking about just energy protection. I think it's kind of a synonym. What do you think? And that's a question for anyone. Feel free to chime in and what your thoughts are. What about warding or protecting or shielding that any of you do? Is there anything that you can think of that you think is very effective, and why do you think it's effective? What makes you do what you do? Do you have tattoos of protection or symbols that you wear for protection purposes? Do you have chants or prayers or deities that you look to for making sure that you're protected and safe? Maybe you have something you've done to your house to ward or protect or shield it from harm. And obviously, share what you feel comfortable sharing, right? Not everybody likes to share. Not everybody likes to talk about it. Sometimes people just accept it. I always thought that was interesting that a lot of times Buddhism, feng shui, home, comfort, Buddhism and feng shui together. Interesting. Feng shui, I always thought it was interesting because the name itself, feng is Chinese for wind, and shui is Chinese for water. So it's like wind, water. But feng shui is typically like the energy vibrations of your home itself. Now you mentioned Buddhism. So technically, if you're talking about feng shui specifically, I guess you would associate that with Chan Buddhism. But I think there's different Chinese traditions, Taoism and folk traditions that also incorporate feng shui as well. Or do you just mean yourself? You incorporate all three, or you incorporate a Buddhist version of feng shui? Giving other people a chance to talk. I think I got through most of the stuff that I tried to stream prior to hitting go live, so I think I covered most of it. Let me share some sources, because as always, a lot of these sources I'm looking up after the fact, and I look for sources that kind of match up to what I've read before. But I'm becoming rather fond of WikiWand. They talk about amulets here. And in this particular one here, they're talking about an amulet, also known as a good luck charm or phylactery, is an object believed to confer protection upon its possessor. The word amulet comes from the Latin word amuletum, which Pliny's Natural History describes as an object that protects a person from trouble. Anything can function as an amulet. Items commonly so used include statues, coins, drawings, plant parts, animal parts, and written words. Interesting stuff here. And then you'll see they always have a link to the bottom, just like on Wikipedia. WikiWand is a type of a wiki. Just like Wikipedia, though, you have to jump to the bottom. And let me jump to the bottom where it says one. I thought it would take me down by clicking it. They have a whole bunch of different examples here. The very bottom of the page is going to be a reference link, so you can look stuff up. So references. So it'll be, should be the first one here. So whether or not you want to believe these sources is up to you, but it's nice to have references. Anytime you look stuff up, anytime you see things, like even in these videos where I'm talking, always try to look for additional confirmation and ask yourself, is this a legit source? Is this something I should believe in? I probably should have read this whole thing before I talked today, but I wanted to share my thoughts on amulets before I dig into others. But this is still interesting to see other ways that people look at it. Likewise, WikiWand has, of course, stuff on talisman. And when they're talking about talisman here, talisman is an amulet or other object considered to possess supernatural or magical powers. A talisman can have protective properties, turning away harmful or evil influences. It is a very sacred object said to give protection and good luck. It is also said that when making a talisman, the person intending to use it must craft it, which I always thought was kind of cool. Now, I don't necessarily agree with the idea of that person has to craft it personally. I think that taking a pre-made object, for example, if you were to order a Mjolnir offline and you were to infuse it with intent and will, I think that that can work as a talisman as well, potentially. Now, granted, I don't have this as a talisman, but as an example, one of the Mjolnir that I am very fond of, that I typically wear. I wear it a little less because of how the community has been getting, specifically with those who do wear Mjolnirs, and I don't necessarily want to associate with a lot of them. But that's another story for another day. But I think you could still use something like that as a talisman and infuse it yourself if you really wanted to. I actually was just looking through. I actually have another Mjolnir here, which I've never worn, but this one is historically accurate. I believe this is from something that they found in Gotland, Sweden. I think it's Swedish, but it's a historically found Mjolnir. I've never actually worn it, so I keep it in a little bag next to the other one because why not? So, but again, just because it's crafted by someone else, I don't think takes away from it, even though this website said otherwise. So even though I have sources here that you can check out and read, it's just to give you some ideas. It doesn't mean that these are 100% accurate and the only ones you can use. You were talking about home protection, and I was referring to the flow of protective energy. I have a Buddhist feng shui bracelet. Hope I spelled it correctly. Not too bad, I think. I think feng shui, I think you were a little closer. I think the first time you were closer, I thought. I'll just type it in really quick, look it up. Feng shui. Obviously, we're doing it in English, not in Chinese or Mandarin. Yeah, you were right the first time. Fengshi, feng shui. Which is always cool stuff. Ward. Etymology.com. People have mentioned that it's not necessarily the most accurate site out there, but it's still something I like to use because I'd rather look up something than just listen to a random book I read it in. Yep, feng shui. There you go. Old English. Word. A guarding, protection, watchman, sentry, or keeper. Apparently it's from a Proto-Germanic word. And source also Old Saxon word. Old English. Worde. Ward is a verb, to keep guard, watch, protect, and preserve. So I think we can see how that applies to the conversation we're having as far as protection goes. Shielding, same site. Middle English shield, frame or rounded plate of wood, metal, carried by a warrior on the arm or in the hand as defense. A little bit different than what we're talking about, but if we look at it as the verb to talk about shielding, right? Middle English shielding, protect, defend, or shelter from danger or harm, which again, the idea of a ward can fit into that generalized category, potentially. Amulet, mid-15th centuries. amuletus, from Latin amuletum, Pliny, which also was found on WikiWand. It's always nice when you look up multiple sources and they confer with each other. Thing worn superstitiously as a charm against spells and disease, which is of uncertain origin, perhaps related to amorili, to advert, to carry away, or remove. So we're not sure, apparently, where it might come from, according to this. But these superstitiously, I think, is important to call out, because like I was saying earlier as my disclaimer, some people don't believe in this stuff, and that's fine. Off the top, sorry. No, you're fine. Warding is German. According to this, that's what this is claiming. So you always want to dig into this stuff further. So you can look up the Wörter, right? And you can try to find additional stuff. Finding good things. Oh, here's Wörter on WikiWand. And try to find out where some of the stuff might be coming from. So you can dig into it further, and I highly encourage that. Half the page is cut off. Fantastic. But yeah, I would take any word that you see and do a deep dive onto it and try to find out what other information you can find about the word and its meaning and its origins. But that's what it's saying here is ward. It's talking about Old Norse further. And it's from Proto-Germanic, and it's this word right here. Yeah, absolutely. That's the problem I have with a lot of old stuff, like these conversations around protection and spirituality. A lot of them, like I said, came from books and speaking with other people. How do I know any of that's accurate or legit? So I like to do a little search online. We are getting more and more stuff that is posted online. And sometimes we find some gems as far as where it comes from, where it originates from. Sometimes we don't. And etymology.com, even though it's a cool website, I don't know how accurate it is or how trustworthy it is, because I think it's based upon some questionable material sometimes. But it still is, again, better than just hearing some random person in a chat say, well, it's this way because I say so. Talisman, 1630s. Magical figure cut or engraved on stone or metal under certain observances. From French talisman, in part via Arabic tilsum. So there you go. This starts to veer away a little bit from where we hear the suggestion of what talisman is as far as having magical powers or being something of magic, right? So it makes me wonder if the way talisman is used today, where it came from and why it started getting used that way. LearnReligions.com is another really cool one. They talk about grounding, shielding, and centering techniques. Like I was mentioning earlier, they go hand in hand. So when I saw this article, I'm like, yeah, yeah, no, this is a good one. LearnReligions.com is actually not too bad of a website. A lot of the things they say is very similar to things that I've commonly heard repeated either in books or in general pagan communities that I've interacted with online or in person, more online than in person because I don't like to travel. Magical shielding techniques. If you spend any time in the metaphysical or pagan community, you've probably heard people use the term shielding. Shielding is a way of protecting yourself from psychic, mental, or magical attack. It's a way of creating an energy barrier around yourself that other people can't penetrate. So that's very, very interesting stuff. Pretty straightforward. Self-defense. Also on learnreligions.com as well. It's hard to find some of this stuff because it's been repeated so many times. It's hard to track down a source and origin from where a lot of the stuff comes from, but it's still fascinating to read about, I think. I love reading about this stuff. How do you know if you're under attack? Yeah, I don't know. I think people get a little paranoid and think everyone's out to get them. Here you go. Create a magic mirror spell which bounces the hex or curse back to its sender. And I gave you an example of that earlier. Magical crystals and gemstones. So these apparently have these properties that are supposed to help you. Now, when it comes to energy vibrational stuff, it's like you can't, I don't know. What source do you trust? I know, like, for example, like in Poland, they're big on wearing amber for protection. Like, and they're Catholic, like the whole country's Catholic. But they do. A lot of them wear amber, and I think it's amber. I'm going to have to double check on that. Do Poles wear a lot of amber for protection? Amber in Poland. Poland ties with amber have a long history. It is amber. Cool. I was right. Look at me remembering stuff. So, and then here, this irishpaganschool.com is pretty slick too. So here's like I said, a couple sites to check out things related to today's topic. Beginner's Guide to Creating Magical Wards. Again, they call it wards here too. The origin of magical wards. The history of magical wards and protective spells is a long one, stretching back to ancient civilizations, which is always drove me nuts when people word it this way, because it's kind of like a cop-out. Oh, it's from ancient times. Well, where's it from? Ancient times. Okay, but who told ancient times? Oh, that voice tickled my throat. But yeah, it's basically like if you can't trace it back to a specific spot, just generalizing, saying ancient. Is that like 50 years? Is that 100? Is that 1,000? How do you know it comes back from that far if you don't have a way to trace it back that far? Never like that turn of phrase there. These spells, rituals, magical items were used to form a protective barrier around a home or living space. That actually kind of falls in line of what the way I'm used to using word. Using the word ward. As well as guard an individual from physical and emotional harm, such as might be caused by ghosts, spirits, the she, or the ill intent or active cursing of an enemy. So that's definitely interesting as well. Yeah, they got some pretty cool information reading on here. And like I said, that's kind of the thing here too, when you're talking about a lot of these techniques and practices that you read in different books or stuff. Lol, what did I miss? My cough? Is that what's funny? Because I died here from my ancient times. What's funny? What are you laughing at? But yeah, looking at a lot of these resources and sources where things come from and why do we talk about what we do, it's real easy to pick up a book and read it and then remember it and forget you read it. And then you're so sure that it's real because I've learned it before. Well, you read it once in a book, but who says that author knows what they're talking about? I think that's my most frustrating thing that I experience when it comes to researching or talking about a lot of this stuff, is it's really hard to back up these claims. So at a certain point, we just kind of have to trust that either none of us know what we're talking about and move on. And when you use a word like warding or shielding, say it. This, like I said, my disclaimer at the beginning of this video, this is hearsay. This is stuff I remember reading about and talking to people about. Doesn't make it right. Does that mean I shouldn't make a video about it? No, because plenty of people make a video about it and try to claim it like it's fact. I'm going to make a video about it and let you know, hey, this is what I remember reading about in a book once upon a time. Just trying to acknowledge where it comes from. So, but that's it. That's most of the stuff I wanted to talk about in today's live. We are hitting the 48-minute mark, which for me, it's been an hour and 20 minutes. What do y'all think? Any final thoughts on warding, protections, shielding, favorite techniques, symbols you wear, tattoos you have, how you protect your home or space, cleanse it, whatever? Feel free to share your thoughts below. I'll definitely wait a minute before I wrap up the live. Hopefully the cutting in and out wasn't too painful. And we'll see about doing a topic again for next Saturday. Maybe I'll remember how to use the go live button, or at least confirm that it did go live, because I know a couple times I was going to hit the go live button and it was already live. So I'll confirm that again for the future. So again, sorry, apologize for anyone who came and waited and had nothing. So, but with no comments and the fact that I'm constantly dropping frames and the stream and live is stuttering, I am going to go ahead and wrap it up here at this point. So again, thank you all for watching. If you're watching this after the live, thanks for tuning in. Leave your thoughts below. Be happy to hear them.